Well, hello and welcome to the Experts Podcast. It's Nick Hayes with you. This is a little bit of a regular thing that we do, the Media Landscape Report that's produced by Medianet each year. It's a chat we have about what journalists are thinking, what PRs are thinking, and what's going on in the communication space. It's a great little report with just short of 1,000 journalists that are actually interviewed. They are reviewed for their thoughts and their views around the things that are tackling their industry and how they're going about their business. And I am joined by the wonderful Amrita Sidhu, the Managing Director at Medianet. Hello, Amrita.
Hey, Nick, how are you? So great to be back here once again chatting to you about our Media Landscape Report.
It is an amazing report. It's the Bible, as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to understanding how the media is working today. Short of Meet the Media, which you're a proud sponsor, thank you very much, Medianet. It is a report that just gets down to the very nitty gritty of the things that are concerning for journalists. And I've always said this: when you know what's going on behind the scenes, you can best communicate. What's been the biggest finding for you for the 2026 report?
Yeah, great point to start off, Nick. And I think just by way of a bit of context for those that are listening, Medianet's been producing this report since 2014. We produce it every year. The last 7 or 8 years, it's been an annual report, and it's really our way as an organisation that operates at the intersection of news media and PR and comms as a way of giving back to the industry, freely available, well-researched and detailed report about, as you said, the state of the media, what's top of mind for journalists and working newsrooms, and then how it can be used by corporate affairs, communications, PR professionals. So that's really, just to pick up a little bit on the point that you said that we've been doing this every year. Choosing the biggest finding, tricky one, because there were some juicy bits there, and I'm sure we will unpack that over the course of this conversation. I would say, how can I not have an AI element, though, probably in my biggest finding? And I think it's a really important talking point. Are journalists increasingly adopting AI? Well, yes, they are now, but in direct correlation to their adoption of AI, so is the concern level. 93% of 800 plus journalists told us they are concerned about the impact of AI on journalistic quality. 3%. We ask 45 questions in this survey, Nick. It's not a lot of questions. This was the answer with the second highest consensus percentage amongst all the respondents, and one of the highest concern percentages I've ever seen in, close to a decade of producing this report. So it's a biggie. It's a biggie.
It certainly is a biggie. And I think when I remember the first time that it popped up in your report, one of the first lines of the questions, and I think from both respondents, from journalists and PR, it was a bit wishy-washy to begin with. It's sort of, is this just a little bit of a thing that's going on? It's the hot moment that people are just, it's the word of the year, if you like. And now, as it progresses and continues to become far more utilised by both journalists and consumers / PRs, it is seriously becoming a big threat to what might be public interest journalism, what is essentially the very things that we're after. And I've noticed this, Amrita, it's not just so much the AI, it's even the AIing of the AI, the summary reports, the little things that come with it that aren't necessarily, you ask it to do a job, but then it even summarizes the job's job, which I think this is the dangerous part. We are becoming really, really dependent on this, that it is doing way too much of the thinking for us.
Yeah, and I'm hearing that a lot from the industry, Nick, this concept of AI asking another AI to do another bit of AI. But, that kind of joke aside, so we have 54% of journalists and newsrooms now telling us that they are using AI on a daily basis. That's up from 18% just year on year. Now, the concern factor has also increased because it's up from 79% to 93%. But how are they using it, right? What are they using it for? And I'd be interested if those communication and PR professionals that are listening in, whether this, relates to them, resonates with them. So the most used tool is ChatGPT at 66% and Gemini at 35%. And it is being used primarily for summarizing research and transcribing audio and video, right? It is not really being used a lot for writing. And the sentiment coming out of the survey that you can see in the quotes and in the free comments is journos don't like to use it for writing, and they don't like it when PRs and comms professionals are sending them content that is AI generated. And I'm sure we'll get into that as well. But those are the kind of current use cases in our working newsrooms.
Let's dive into that right now, because I think that is just critical intel for all in the communication space to realize and know this, that the media knows the content that you are driving through that is being generated by LLMs, by the chat GPTs, the AI tools that you're using. So be fully aware of that, and they won't like it. And from the other side of it too, we as humans and as consumers of content, we know when there is not a story or a human story behind it. It's our radars are pretty good on this. And I think if you are using it, use it wisely, because it is so much. We cannot give up the very thing as an industry, the human aspect, the human side of our storytelling. If we give that up now, well, we might as well just turn off the lights as we leave the room, because we're not coming back.
Yeah, and I'm going to share a couple of data points from the report, Nic, that really speak to that position that you've expressed there. 48%, so that's 1 in 2, claim that they can almost always spot an AI written pitch, right? So they know how to identify an AI written pitch that's hitting their inbox or hitting their mobile phones. 23% suspect that they receive AI generated pitches often or occasionally. So that's getting pretty high. And 78% of journalists said if they receive an AI generated pitch, they decrease trust in the source. So there's your point. So AI generated content is reducing trust. What is increasing trust? Human element, personalization, relevance, showing that you understand what they write, who they write for. So here's the thing. They're not using AI to produce and write the content. They don't want you to use it either. Otherwise, it might fall into this AI PR slot. But if you can personalize your communication to them, if you can humanize it, if you can make it relevant to them, your trust level's going to really go up.
Oh, it's great to see this and great to hear this. I think sometimes just because you can use a tool, an AI tool, to create content, it doesn't mean you should. And by that I mean literally the little things that make us uniquely different or give us that little extra edge over maybe our competitors or someone else that is out there. It is our personal opinion, position, and view. And when you are using the AI and the AI slop that is running around, then you are creating anything that could be created by anyone else. And we don't want that. And I think this is critical. I'm loving that the industry recognizes this, and not just from the journalist perspective, from the PR perspective as well, because this is the unique difference. And this is for all brands, for all people out there. Don't head down that path. Use it as a tool, but don't use it as your final piece. Don't use it as something that you're prepared to put your brand and your name behind it. You'll fall over.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what's really validating for this industry as well is that press releases and industry contacts remain and are the two top story sources, right? So we'll talk about the decline of social, I'm sure, as part of this conversation as well. But that's so validating and encouraging for all of us in this industry to hear, not just because Medianet represents a PR distribution service, or I absolutely believe in the quality of expert spokespeople, not solely with those hats on am I pleased about that, but they are trusted, reliable, credible sources, and the need in and amongst all this AI slop, PR slop, for trusted, reliable, accurate content in newsrooms and by journos that are, increasingly time poor, squeezed for resources. It's absolutely paramount. So if you use too much AI or you use it in the wrong way in your interactions, unfortunately, you're going to impact that trust level overall. And keen on your perspective on this too, Nic, because we always debate, the future of press releases, and it never goes away. If not, it's becoming more and more valuable now. So these quality, trusted sources, PR and people. Yeah.
Yeah. Look, Amrita, I'm a big believer in the press release, and I'm a big believer more so on who it comes from. And that is, to your point, around trust. It is around authority. It is around brand. If you are delivering the content the way that media wants it delivered, and the journalists, they're telling us how they want it delivered. I love the little stat also around the follow-up phone call, something that a lot of PRs and comms people are a little bit reluctant to do, but 60% of journos are saying, hey, we'll take one call, please. We don't mind that little prompt. So don't bother us too much. But I think that it all comes down to who it's coming from and where it's coming from. And again, that's the other side of the delivery of content is you're trusting someone when they hit click and they click on a release or they click on to your email. Any email that you receive, you're putting a certain amount of trust into where that is coming from. And journalists are no different, and comms people are no different to the fact that we only tend to take who we know from or what we have, if they're a trusted source before. And I think this is the big comms killer, that everyone who thinks that AI is going to help them or serve them, is that AI will then put you into, as a journalist from The Australian, the wealth editor, Julianne Sprague, has a little file on her email saying shit PR. And that shit PR is generated with content that is not relevant, that is completely not worthy, or not even a news story that particular media would want to use or could use. And that's the danger that you're entering into when you're going down the AI. The media release, though, the content that is sitting within it, if it's well drawn up, it's well put together, and it's from a trusted source, then that's one of the most critical pieces of content that you'll get. Short of also too, number one, as we all know, is the relationships and connections that we've got with media at the other end. And they both work well together. And that's the beauty of the comms world. I think the press release has still got a long life left in it.
Yeah, thank you, Nic. Couldn't agree more. And that last point you make about them working in tandem, the hard written down facts or details in a press release, and then the relationship, the picking up the phone, the giving them a call, the getting into their inbox in an authoritative and trusted way. And isn't the decline of X, as identified in our report, such a great example of the when trust is lost and the outcome when trust is lost? Back from the heydays of 2020, when it was upwards of 70% of journalists using X, Twitter, whatever it used to be called back then, as a story source, as something they were actively using as a professional tool, it's dropped to 36%. It's more than halved, right? And it speaks directly to the drop in trust on that particular platform. I know you have also expressed your reservations about X as a platform. I mean, what a great example of the impact of a lack of trust has with the way someone on the news and journalistic side will use it.
Yeah, look, I blame Trump for that. Trump, he's wholly responsible for all of that. But it also comes down to this. I think that the the way that we are consuming content, we don't have a lot of time, or our radar is very fickle now around the kind of news and content that we can receive or want to receive. And that is where, unfortunately, that is just a sewer now of complete rubbish, of content that just doesn't work anymore. And I'm glad to see that journalists have stepped away from it. And I know a lot of people in the comms world have just said, look, I've had enough. I can't even, it's not even good for my mental health to be there, let alone, the kind of content that's running around. So I'm pleased to see that falling off. I am interested with WhatsApp though, because WhatsApp has increased, which is good, because you sort of still need to have that personal contact and relationship. And it gets back to that very message. Have a relationship and a connection with the media at the other end. Use the platforms that they're using. And I can't tell you how many radio interviews I've done recently on WhatsApp, because it's just a very clean source of communication. It's free. And it's also, you've got to have the direct contact with the people at the other end. So WhatsApp, good to see that those numbers are increasing.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's up to 36% now. Are using it in a professional capacity. WhatsApp, Instagram's at 71%, and Facebook, it continues to remain the number one most used social media platform by journalists professionally. It has been for a number of years now at about 75%. So interesting, Nic. Have you thought about the fact that Facebook, Instagram and WhatsApp are all owned by Meta? I wonder whether there's another story in there somewhere. Who knows? Maybe a podcast for another day. But I do find it interesting that those three platforms
Maybe
dominating now happen to be owned or part of the same social media stable, as it were.
Yeah, well, that is interesting. They're just doing PR. They're PRing their platforms better in the comms and communication space, one might say. So good work by them. I love Instagram. I think Instagram, for me, just personally, visually, it's just a great platform to work with, and it's amazing the kind of success. Funnily enough, not so much Snapchat, but you've got other platforms that are doing very, very well. That if you're not trying to sell or communicate something, you're just trying to build brand or authority that way. It's amazing how much you can actually get engaged with an audience that might not necessarily be your target audience, but it ends up getting there at the end of the day. And that's what I find quite powerful with social media. It's just another amplifier out there. But it still concerns me, Amrita, Facebook. It still concerns me, Facebook. I don't get it as a place for comms people to sort of search through, but I get its power. I get its reach.
Yeah. And you mentioned there about alternative platforms, and that might be a good segue to share another really interesting data point coming out of this year's report, which I'll then tack into this whole concept around news influencers, right? So we had 49% of those 800 plus journalists, so close to 1 in 2, saying that they are now already publishing or considering publishing on alternative channels like Substack. Why? They're seeking creative freedom that maybe they don't get in their mainstream, more traditional newsrooms, or they're seeking end audience connection, like you just mentioned, right? Because what they are seeing is this rise of news influencers. And I'm not necessarily here talking about your fashion influencer or your makeup influencer. These are authoritative, well-qualified people who have an opinion on news, and now end consumers are going directly to them to source information and fact. Now, 41% of journalists see them as a threat to professional standards, but 26% of them saw it as an opportunity to reach a younger audience in a different and more dynamic way, and that direct audience connection, which you just spoke about as well. So there are lots of evolving platforms that we are seeing media in Australia start to experiment with, and as PR and comms professionals, we should be aware that that's happening and that's a rising trend.
Yeah, I love that, Amrita. And one of the big trends that we're even noticing from a media stable perspective and a Meet the Media side is, how do we engage younger audiences? What are they consuming? And what can we do? We know where mainstream media heads to. We know the demographics. We know where we're heading there. But how do we get to the younger people? And we had Billy Fitzsimons from the Daily News come through. Sorry, from the Daily News. I'll get it right. Come through to Meet the Media, and just understanding from her what a younger person's looking for. They're looking for short, sharper news stories. They're looking for more visual and a little bit less sort of the doom and gloom, a little bit more enlightening and pick me up. And they've got a far different priority list, that generation that we're targeting to there in a younger group, in the younger generation. So you've got to shape and frame and pitch the stories that way, as opposed to maybe just the traditional means. But it's so important to get through the people and the way that they consume it. I should call it the Daily Oz, not the Daily News. The Daily Oz is where Billy Fitzsimons is the editor of. We've got to do it differently for them.
Yeah, and if you don't mind, I'd love to share one or two quotes, some nice, juicy little comments from the journos. That was probably more of the free text kind of response, and this is when we're talking about those alternative platforms, the direct audience connection, the understanding where the younger audience is, and I quote here. I think it's easy at looking at them as a threat when we should be looking at what they're doing, see how it works, and how we can also be in that space and make a difference. And this one is then balanced off with this particular quote. If a journalist publishes incorrect information, they are held accountable. Influencers sprout rubbish daily and continue to grow their audience. So it's really about what we are learning from going direct to those younger audiences and the methods and platforms that enable that, whilst maintaining the editorial standards and the integrity that drives our whole news ecosystem here in Australia.
Look, I understand the threat that influencers might have on news. I understand why journalists might see that, because they are regulated, they are controlled, they have brands that they represent, they've got paymasters that they need to continue to adhere to, where an influencer doesn't need to necessarily have that space. And I know what you're talking about. We're not talking Kim Kardashian. We're talking about those media, or even, we've even got Karl Stefanovic now out with his own podcast. He's doing the kind of very thing that is different to his traditional format. You've got Natasha Belling doing her podcast outside of representing and doing the 12 o'clock news on 7 News. So they've got lots of different opportunities to present, but get it through to a larger audience, and more importantly, the younger audience, because we've got to remember, I don't know about you, Amrita, but the only way I was getting daily news when I was growing up was going past the newsagents, picking up a newspaper, or, on occasions be in the car listening to the news or a bit of talkback radio. And that is still today going on. But the younger ones don't do that. They don't do that at all, and we've got to reach them. And a lot of brands are saying to the comms people, how do we reach these younger audiences? We've got to adapt to that. Do what we're doing in traditional, but also adapt over to the way that they consume.
Yeah. And I'd
Speaking
love to just,
of consuming,
I'm so sorry, Nic, if I just before we perhaps move on to the next one, just to kind of add to that, and I love what you said there about, a couple of your close contacts like Natasha doing her own podcast and everything. It's really important that PR and comms understand that even those working in mainstream media like that, they do have those alternative channels, because while that journo might not cover your brand when they're reporting on radio or TV or in their main publication, they may cover it in the podcast. And isn't that a great channel for either positive brand mentions or being mindful just in case your brand gets mentioned not in the way that you would want it to as well? So I love those two examples there, because they're really great real world practical examples of prominent journalists that are doing things on other platforms. And we need to know about that. And we need to meet them there as well.
Well, while we're at that point too, we should just give a real a pat on the back to a lot of the media houses that have really adapted beautifully to presenting not only the content that they have, but presenting it in a way that consumers now are using it. It is a consumer's world out there. It is their time, not necessarily the broadcasters or the publishing houses' time. They've adapted to that consumer behavior that has said, look, we want it now, or we want it in our own time, not in your time. And that part is a big pat on the back to all the media houses around that have really captured that. They were very slow off to the mark. And I was there when the first online websites were coming out for all of the publications, and they didn't know how to work it. They just wanted to give everything for free and get it out as quickly and fast as possible. Now, even with paywalls are working. If quality journalism is still sitting there behind those paywalls, people will pay for it. And I only know this too well, Amrita, because I've got just about every publication. I read just close to all the publications around the country, and it costs me a fortune. But I wouldn't have it any other way, because I can sit here right here in Adelaide and read every newspaper in the country. And that's the beauty of it, having it at your fingertips and good quality content still sitting there.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Your positivity there, by the way, is absolutely reflected in the general kind of optimistic outlook towards the media as well. For the first time in a number of years now, 53% of respondents felt a level of optimism towards the state of the media industry. So your instinct and feeling there is reflected by a very large cohort of working journalists too.
Finally, it's turning around. It's been a shocking couple of years, but finally it's turning around. Hey, let's draw our attention a little bit to the public relations industry, the comms people, the people that are the communicators of brands, messages. They are the connection. They are the bridge to media. How have they found, what did you find through when talking to them, their feelings towards AI, their feelings towards other things like social media, etc.? I'm keen to hear the AI side.
Yeah, look, I think that on the AI side for the PR and comms part of this relationship, this equation, there is a lot of experimentation as well going on in how they are using AI. By and large, it mostly correlated with how journalists are using it, research, summarization, maybe content ideation rather than writing it, maybe helping you get started or maybe finesse the headline of a pitch or the subject line of a pitch as well. I'd like to believe that the majority of PRs, and they mean this when they tell us this, that we speak to, are saying that it's really important to keep that human element because that kind of underpins the relationship with the news media, and ultimately that relationship matters a lot. I quote these two things, please, if I may, that really speak to this, these two comments from the report. This is still a relational industry because trust and human discretion still matter. The best PR professionals understand the stories the journalist writes, the particular publication they write for, and bring genuinely strong ideas. And that piece, I think, is the human layer, which for now, anyway, AI cannot answer or compete with.
It can't compete with it for sure, without doubt. And I think that's the beauty of this. And I think for any brand that's listening to this, when you've got a good PR person, hang on to them because they are going to be your best microphone, amplifier, the whole kit and caboodle when it comes to telling your story. And that human element is just never going to be replaced by AI. I've been studying AI now for the last 12 months and testing it and working with it, and there is just nothing that it can. It's one of the great tools to have, but it is not what you use when you're delivering your message and your content out to the general public. What do you think there, Amrita, with the PRs though? I mean, how are they feeling generally about their industry, about their jobs? Because that's, I guess, the whole thing with AI is that everyone thinks that they potentially could be doing this. That now all of a sudden, someone, for instance, who wasn't publishing any content is publishing 3 or 4 blogs a week. What's the comms world thinking about this? Because I always say quality is better than quantity, but is that breaking through?
Yeah, the concern and trepidation is definitely there about the potential disruption and the impact to individual roles, let alone a function, especially a function that has been predominantly creative and needs to continue to be creative. I don't know that the concern percentage would be as high as what the journalists expressed, in the high 90s percentage concern about the impact of AI on integrity and their roles. I feel that the PRs that are using AI most effectively are experimenting and understanding, like you have been for the better part of the year, where it can and will positively impact. The reality is here, Nic. It's here. It's here. So we have to find our way through it. And I think burying your head in the sand as a PR and comms professional and being blind to its potential impact or its potential assistive nature as well is not the prudent thing to do. And the PRs that are doing this really well and the communication professionals that are leaning in and experimenting so they know where and how to use it, and even more importantly, what to say to their bosses about how it should be used and how it could be powerful or a risk is really important. You need information and usage at your fingertips here.
Yeah, I love that, Amrita, because every comms professional that'll be listening to this today will be going, I love AI. I think AI is good, but my boss thinks he knows everything now. And not only does he think he knows everything, he's got a tool there that actually tells him that he knows everything. So we've got to be able to work with this well. And for the comms people out there, I know it's difficult because you're watching a lot of, all of a sudden, excess content flying around everywhere and people throwing bricks at you if you're not up to that same sort of level or standard. But it really is about a quality versus quantity, and always go back to quality before quantity. You don't have to punch out 5 or 6 pieces a week. Punch out one good piece of the week. You'll find that that's far more rewarding than the slop that is running around at the moment. It's frightening.
You mentioned something there, and I'll just expand on it a tiny bit. I heard a great statement by a very senior AFR journalist just a couple of days ago, where he said the worst or the most damaging thing that can be happening now is that C-suite and business leaders who have employed comms and PR professionals for a reason stop listening to them. He was like, you have them there for a reason. Please listen to them. They know how to manage your brand. They know how to manage your story. They know how to build a relationship with the media. And he's someone on the media side, the newsroom side, saying he's concerned business leaders and C-suite will not listen to the own people that they have employed. So that's exactly what you just, really reflects what you just said a moment ago as well.
I do love. Look, and journalists want good PRs. They want good PRs because they're a very important tool and a very important resource for what they do. And it's when it's in the hands of someone who doesn't know what they're doing or has very different views as to how a story is, or not quite up to speed with proper communications, or even communicating the way media needs them to communicate. It's one of the great things that you get from a Meet the Media event is hearing from journalists on how they want a story told, or what pieces they need to bring together to make that story whole. It's so critical for that. And when it's in the hands of someone that doesn't quite know what they're doing, or not professional or not experienced enough, then it becomes a nightmare for the journalist at the other end. So I'm pleased to hear that AFR journalist saying that, because that is very critical and key for all that work around it. It is a two-lane highway, this thing, Amrita. It's not one-way traffic, it's a two-way highway. And we need good comms people at the same time as we need good journos.
Well said, Nic. Very well said.
Thank you. Now, Amrita, you delivered this at Mumbrella CommsCon, the Media Landscape Report, for the first time. And I know that would have been a lot less daunting than doing the Experts podcast. How did that go? How did the room receive the report?
Yeah, I mean, what are you talking about, Nic? This is the highlight of my Media Landscape Report promotion every year. You know that. It's one of the first things we book in is chatting to you and your fantastic podcast. Look, it's always brilliant to launch something live, like really, really live, and that's what it was. It had literally just come off the press on Monday, and Wednesday we were on stage, taking it to a few hundred PR and communication professionals. I would like to believe, based on the feedback I received after and the general vibe of the room, it was really well received. I think there were definitely some shock and awe moments when we talked through some of the data, the same data that I've talked about with you, when we talk through how AI slop, as you mentioned a few times, can become PR slop if we're not careful about it as well. One can morph into the other very quickly as well. I think that was quite eye-opening and telling for a lot of the audience. It was really nice to be delivering a message, though, reminding PR and communications professionals how valuable they still are, and that PR is rising while social is falling. Think about what we just discussed about 10 minutes ago. What are the top sources for journalists? Industry contacts, press releases. So if we're not there, what happens? What happens to the whole news ecosystem? We have to remember we are super valuable in this equation too. And that was a really nice message to deliver as well, live in front of a few hundred people.
They would have loved that. They would have loved that, Amrita. It's always nice to be told that you're needed and you're wanted and you're necessary. So it's one thing, I suppose, that we're seeing a lot of reports across the media around what industries are going to be deeply affected by, what AI jobs are going to be lost to AI. But I still feel very strongly that in the comms space and the media space, which has been under two extreme pressures for the last couple of years, we've seen that and heard reports from both media and comms people for the PRs saying you're not necessarily being paid enough, working extreme hours. It has been highly pressurized, but just to hear the fact that there's been a bit of a turnaround. I love the fact that people are feeling a bit more buoyant, and for them to hear that their jobs are necessary, it's really good news. So well done. I think, as I said earlier, if you've got a good PR person, hold on to them. They are like gold to your organisation, and yes, look after them. Hey, Amrita, we're rounding up very shortly right now. What do you think? You've done this report for quite a few years now. There are some trends that are sort of popping up. Obviously, AI is still very dominant in this particular report. What do you think we might be looking at in the next report, this time next year? Is AI still going to be dominant, or will we be looking at something else? Will the international global pressures of everything going on affect the way that we do communications and the way that media works?
Look, very possibly. AI is a massive disruption. AI is also almost like borderless as well. So things that may impact other countries are now flowing through as a result of our use of AI and other geopolitical things, into our market. What do I hope to hear in next year's report is even building more on what we've heard in this year's report. And that is that PR and comms has never been more important and valuable, and trust, authenticity, and relationships are everything. So I'd really love that sentiment to continue to build and grow in next year's report. Yes, we will be talking about AI. Yes, I'm sure geopolitics and things like I mentioned a second ago will be factors we have to consider because we're sensible people and that's what we do. But trust, authenticity, the human relationship, It's come through really strongly in this year's report. When all of you read it, you'll see that too. And I really hope I'm sitting here next year, Nic, going, we were right. That's come out as number one once again.
Oh, look, I think you're spot on. I think, and particularly with trust, I think trust it's a commodity today that is so easily lost, and it is something there and it's very hard to gain. But the reality behind the news and the content that we're delivering on and the platforms and the checks and balances that are in place, there's a reason we go back to media. Mm-hmm. There's a reason we go to the brands that we trust, because they give us the quality, they give us the truth. And I think that's the thing that we need to continue to maintain, and a little less of that you're seeing in online or that has been generated by AI. It's so important. Amrita, thank you so much for joining us on the Experts Podcast. I think you get a T-shirt now, because I think you're now 4 times on the podcast. It's something that you can wear with pride around Sydney town. If people want to get hold of the report, what's the best way to do it?
I can't wait to get that T-shirt, Nic. Thank you. I'll be checking my mail every day until it arrives. Best way to get the report, medianet.com.au. You can download it. It's for free. Don't even need to put your details in. As I mentioned, this is our way of really contributing back into the industry. Would love everyone to get their hands on it. Read it through. Ping me if you've got questions, if you'd like to discuss it more. I'd love to hear people's perspectives, and I'd love to hear if there's anywhere that we can support them or give them some more advice, be it on the newsroom or on the PR and comp side.
Fantastic. Look forward to... Well done. Fantastic. And thank you for being a big supporter of the Meet the Media event. It's great to be able to partner with Medianet and bring a lot of what's in that report to real life at those events. It's critical to be able to make that human connection, that eye-to-eye contact with a journalist, to be able to pitch a story, to talk about what is affecting you, what are the stories that you could be telling, and doing it in front of a journalist. It's so powerful. Amrita, thanks for joining us today on the Experts Podcast.
Thank you as always for having me, Nic. Such a pleasure.
That's Amrita Sidhu, the Managing Director of Medianet. She's just delivered the 2026 Media Landscape Report, and some great intel in there. We'll have a link to that report in the show notes as well. And we look forward to having your company when next week we talk to another media and another expert. We'll see you then.